This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy and Gary Vasilash, episode 543 for February 11th of 2021. Ford Raptor, so bad, it's good. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
Gary, what up?
Just doing great, doing another show. Things are good.
I know. This is going to be a fun show today, talking about the new Raptor.
It's nice and sunny outside. It's a beautiful day. And something happened in 1932 on this day, and you've been so good over these several weeks. All right, so I'm going to give you a clue. So Ford announced that it would be building this.
1932. Got to be the V8 engine, the flathead V8.
You are on a roll. So interestingly enough, so the flathead V8 produced a whopping 65 horsepower out of a 3.6 liter engine. I think we're going to hear about a 3.5 liter engine a little later in the show in a couple of minutes that will be far more powerful than that. But
yeah, no kidding. In fact, that engine that we'll be talking about soon, I'm sure is over 100 horsepower per liter.
Could be. But yeah, so the famous flathead Ford that the Eagles sang about it. And take it easy, right?
Yeah, that was an interesting engine. Henry forced his engineers to do that. They really didn't want to do a V8. He knew that they had to do something that would top Chevrolet because its inline six was the thing back in the day. Mm-hmm. And based on what I've read, is the big hang-up was being able to cast a V8 engine in one piece.
Right.
And they kept saying, no, we can do it in multiple pieces. And Henry was like, no, kept driving them to figure it out. And they figured it out.
And it's interesting that engine, it first went into something called the Model 18. Who ever heard of the Model 18?
No, that's a new one on me. I'm not familiar with that.
Although I think our journalistic friend who will be joining us may have heard of that.
Well, let's bring him in and find out. Mark Williams, where are you? There you are.
How you guys doing? Hey, good to see you, John. Good to see you, Gary.
Great to have you back. Last time you were on the show, you were in London.
That's right.
You're stateside now, right?
Yes, we're back stateside now. But we have done a couple of trips to the UK. We've got the grandbaby there, so we'll probably be going back pretty soon, too.
I just think you're an international man of mystery that you keep going from one place to the other.
I will say that the most wonderful place to be is in a non-crowded airport like LAX or Heathrow. It's a completely different experience. I recommend it to everybody.
Back to when flying was glamorous again.
Yes, that's right.
All right, let's do the show.
Well, let's bring in our special guest for today. We have got Tony Greco, program manager for the Raptor and the F-150, I guess. Or is it both, Tony, or just Raptor?
It's Raptor. Raptor's part of Ford Performance. So, I have a few counterparts also on F-150 that I work with on a daily basis. But yeah, I look after the Raptor.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Gary.
Tony. Third generation Raptor. What are the key points of this vehicle?
So lots of new stuff to talk about. So lots of work in the suspension. Really, the key that we always like to highlight is the coming off the rear leaf spring suspension and now onto the coils. That's pretty big. And then lots of part changes also in the front to give us the added wheel travel that we have both front and rear. New this year also is the 37-inch tire that we're pretty geeked about, and then we have a really cool exhaust that we've added to it. And then of course the design of the Raptor, well, that just kind of speaks for itself. I think the designers both inside and out did a really nice job.
Yeah. Okay. So you added suspension travel. How much more did you add, and why'd you change the exhaust note?
Well, let me start with the exhaust. That's just an example of us kind of always being um, with the customer base, with the very low base we've had for going on 3 generations. We don't take our customers for granted. We treat them very much like part of the family. And what they've said to us over the past several years is that they would like a more a deeper, more menacing tone in the exhaust. So we took that to heart and just incorporated that as one more thing that we needed to do to meet the expectations with this new Raptor.
And the suspension travel, what would you?
Yeah,
How much
and the
travel?
suspension travel. So we actually had really good suspension travel in the last gen Raptor, and that's something that we kind of keep an eye on. Any chance that you have an opportunity to add more travel, just certainly in the off road, it's just very, very helpful in terms of the truck ability. So it's something we keep an eye on. So we had in the last gen 13-ish in the front, 14 in the rear. Now we've added basically an inch to both front and rear, and that's a lot comes with that in terms of enabling that travel takes a lot of engineering to get all the components to be rightfully placed both in the front and the rear.
All right, I'm going to jump in. This is going to be a little maybe hardcore. I'll represent the enthusiasts out there, but
Sure.
when you say 37-inch tires, that's going to ring a lot of bells for a lot of the hardcore truck guys out there, especially the ones in the Southwest who love to go desert running. So how are you doing that? Are those different kind of frames? You mentioned coil springs in the rear, which is a huge change for what you guys are doing now. Are there different frames for 35 and 37-inch tires?
Yeah, so maybe let me start at the beginning. So 37s have been kind of, so let me just first start by saying that I work with a lot of really passionate off-road guys, and guys that do this as their hobby, guys that own, desert running vehicles of different, calibers. 37s have always been something we've talked about. They're big assemblies, so we know that comes with a challenge. So when we embarked on the 3rd gen, it was something that we wanted to see, give it a serious look to see if that was something that we could do. The 5-link suspension, the rear suspension, is really a key enabler for some of the clearances that we need. And so that was a huge step in the right direction. And then with that, with the 37 comes a lot of part, changes that, we of course then commonized with the configuration that uses the 35-inch tire. But the frame in particular is different from the 35-inch configuration and the 37-inch configuration. And it is different mainly because the spare tire, which we were passionate about packaging that under the bed, requires a different frame configuration.
So are you sending these vehicles down the same line? I mean, if you have completely different frames?
Well, of course, we frame complexity is nothing new in a truck plant. So, in the last generation, we had, the super cab or the shorter wheelbase configuration, and the longer wheelbase, the crew cab, as we refer it to. So we already had 2 frames in the last gen, and so we've again, customer preference, customers tell us what they want, and they just didn't. The shorter wheelbase just wasn't resonating, and so we chose to use that frame space for the 37.
Tony, we got a question here from one of our viewers, Anonymous. Says, What stopped you from going to 40-inch? He says, other than cost, he said, you had to redesign the frame anyway. Just bite the bullet and make the room now.
Yesterday, I was in the garage and I was looking under the truck, and I thought to myself, and I was looking at a 35-inch truck, and I thought to myself, I mean, really, could we maybe get something bigger down here? But the thing is that when the 37's in place, it's really tight back there, guys. I'd love to say that, there's a way to get a 40, but it all comes down to the spare, right? I mean, you can lift a truck, and get a 40 on there, I'm sure. And, I don't know if that could ever come from the factory necessarily, but the spare is the problem. And, we don't want to cheat the customer, right? We don't want your bed space and throw the spare in there. And we don't want to give you an undersized spare. Those don't seem to be the right answers. So, we're pretty happy with the reception that the 37 has received. We're pretty proud of that accomplishment. It took a bit of engineering, and I never want to leave this point without giving credit also to the assembly plant, who was really really great to work with. Kind of seeing that hey, this is a game changer for Raptor, and wanted to be a part of that.
Go ahead, Mark.
Specifically, you talk about having the different frames. You know how popular Raptors are in the second and third hand markets. Their values always stay very high. Is there some way that guy who gets that truck in second or some kind of resale situation could look at the VIN number or look at a tag on the truck to actually determine whether the truck originally came with 35s or 37s?
Well, yeah. So I'm not clear exactly on the question that you're asking. Obviously, the third gen, right? It's pretty, easy to tell. I think if you know what you're looking for, if you have a 35 or a 37-inch frame, regardless of someone taking the tires that came from the factory and moving them to something else. It just in the back, the configuration in the spare area is just different to house a bigger assembly. If you're talking about specifically in the second gen, when you were still on a leaf spring suspension, we have folks running around in the second, even in the first gen, with 37-inch tires. It's not really an issue in the aftermarket. The folks tend to gravitate towards the bigger tire once the factory tire reaches its life at 50 or 60,000 miles, or depending on how rough they rode it. But in the end, right, the key thing that they can't get is the spare to be the same size, right? That's kind of the thing that requires the OEM to step in, and that's kind of the thing that we did in the third gen. Lots of work on that, guys. I don't want to underestimate. Lots of engineering and lots of will from a lot of folks to get that to happen.
Just to clarify, I think I may have misspoke. I wasn't talking about the different generations. I'm talking about how this third generation is going to get into a resale situation down the road. And you mentioned that the shock absorbers, I think, have a little bit different travel when they come from the factory with a 37 versus a 35.
Yeah.
So is there any designation on that vehicle tag or any number or color coding?
Yeah, so assuming that the parts are still what they were from the factory, because then once you go into the aftermarket and you change stuff, I don't really, that's a different thing. But yes, there is the configurations that will be sold with the 37 are specific. The shocks have a specific appearance. The truck itself will be its unique label. So it's actually on the Monroney, it'll be a Raptor 37. It's tagged as a 37. It comes standard with a graphic, which is a really attractive graphic on the box that we've done, on a lot of different other configurations, but we kind of came up with something really cool. And then on the tailgate, it'll always have a 37 in the back.
Tony,
Yeah, if you have a 37, you'll know.
So since the 2015 F-150, the vehicle's been known for having this steel frame and aluminum body and box. Is the Raptor have an aluminum body and box, or did you have to do something different given the conditions that this vehicle is going to be used in?
So from the very beginning, we've used. Let me start by this, guys. So this is an important thing. The F-150 by itself, tremendously good truck, and then it makes it easier for us to make a Raptor when you're already getting a really good start point. So the second generation migrated to the aluminum body. The F-150 did it 15 months before Raptor did, and then Raptor came along and followed suit. So it's in the second gen, it was an aluminum body on a high strength steel frame. That continues on into the third gen. It is still very much a aluminum body, with a steel frame. Now, what Raptor has always done is use composite hoods and fenders, and the reason we do that wears a little bit better in the off-road, but also, we like that bigger, bolder look, and some of those, stamping some of those, draws in the surface is, much more attainable with a composite than it is with aluminum or steel.
Tony,
Is this
you've got quickly, go ahead. Sorry, Jerry.
I just want to follow up on the composite. So is it an SMC that you're using for that? Or?
It is an SMC. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And
Tony,
that's been their day one.
You've got very passionate customers, no question about it. I mean, anybody who buys a Raptor has got to be an enthusiast by definition. But you also say you got a team full of off-road enthusiasts too. Take us through, I mean, you managed the program. Take us through some of what you had to go through, taking customer input, what your team wanted to do. How do you set targets? And then what did you try to deliver?
So the third generation Raptor was, an interesting way that we, I think, approached it. I think we just knew early on that if we wanted the capability off-road to continue to grow the way that it had from Gen 1 to Gen 2, for example, we needed to do something different in the rear suspension. So we embarked on now keep in mind, right, we were in production, we were working on the mid-cycle action for the second gen. And we were working at that time, probably on the live valve shocks. We were trying to introduce the live valve shocks for the first time. So we were working. I mean, there's no doubt our guys are, out in the desert testing, right? But there's a small group of us, myself included, because I kind of tend to, bounce back and forth between the different work streams that are happening on all of Raptor. We were thinking, okay, what do we want to do in the rear? Can we try to look and see if we can find something off the shelf or, off the vast part catalog that exists at Ford Motor Company? You can imagine that we got, you can probably find 50 control arms, right? Or you can find 50, it just, there's so much that you can look through. And we spent a lot of time looking through it. In the end, right, to make the jump that we wanted to make, we didn't find the right solution for the Raptor customer. And so at that point, right, we designed it, and we designed it with no compromises. And that is a huge thing right there, because you can imagine that if you're taking a system that already exists and you're tailoring it to a Raptor, a Raptor configuration, you inevitably have some trade-off. And we weren't shackled by that. We designed what we needed to design to give the customer what they needed. And so that really set the tone for the third gen. That kind of put the ball in motion. Now, yes, there's work streams on shocks, and there's work streams on the front suspension geometry. There's work streams on travel. There's and then the tire kind of came in and kind of became a thing, right? So it's a nonstop moving, living thing, and we have a really, really great chief program engineer he's passionate. He came in from the Mustang and very quickly became passionate about Raptor, and I thank him a lot in terms of our working relationship, where we can continue to push the team in the way it needs to go in order to deliver, I think, what the customer demands. And so it's really an interesting thing that all these work streams are all kind of happening in, really just, maybe a 12-month period, and this thing starts to take shape. Then on top of that, you throw the design process to make this thing look the way that it looks, and that's the fun part, right? That's the cool piece of it. Not to say that suspension and other things aren't cool, but that's kind of where that's where it makes you smile, where you start to see this thing played up a little bit. And so yeah, it was a great journey. I was involved. I did the exact same thing for the last gen, and what makes makes it Raptor special, and really F-150 in general, is you have a lot of the same faces working on these things. Once you start working on something you're passionate about, it's tough to leave.
Mm-hmm. So we've got some questions here from viewers as well. Let's see, there was one that I liked, and Grayson wants to know, what was it like on the Ford side when you first found out about the T-Rex Raptor Easter egg from your friends at Auburn Hills? He says, at least on the consumer side, we love seeing the crosstown rivalry. We get such great trucks coming out of it.
Yeah. So I think they got a big dinosaur eating a small dinosaur. That thing, I'm saying, yeah. We saw it. It got passed around. It kind of laughed at it and then went back about the business. I mean, in the end, right, you got to kind of just go back to maybe like 2009 when we launched the initial Raptor and we kind of invented the space. We know how to do this. We know, don't get me wrong, we've learned a lot along the way. But the passion that's on this team day in and day out, we know how to do this. And TRX, they're out there, and at some point someone will put the two trucks together and they'll go run off road, or they'll do whatever they're going to do in some sort of competition. But that doesn't really impact the way we go about our business. We know we're getting an awesome F-150. The F-150 team is top notch. We know we're going to inherit a great truck, and then we do what we do. And leaders lead. The F-150 team is some of the best engineers I've ever worked with, and the guys in Ford Performance, they just kind of add that next layer of passion that comes with the stuff that these guys all do on the weekend. And we got guys that they were in King of the Hammers last weekend, and they drove in it, right? So we got serious guys, and then we got track guys that are like super fast in Mustangs and other, just so that there's a lot of passion in here that still dates back to the SVT days. And when you kind of put that on top of getting kind of that awesome F-150 that we get, every couple of years when they redo it, it's straightforward to make a Raptor.
Tony, were you already going down the road, and when the TRX came out, that there was nothing that you guys said, we need to divert slightly, or just kept going straight?
It's just we don't pay attention to those things. We're busy doing what is right for the Raptor customer. This is the third generation. We've been doing this for more than a decade. We got some really talented people on this team, guys. It's inspiring to me to come in and day out and see them just struggle in a good way to resolve issues that are not trivial when you start to operate this type of vehicle at the limit of at the edge of at the limit, right? You're pushing the the limits of the platform. You're pushing the limits of parts. You're pushing, when you're doing that, right, you need very talented people to deliver on that. And it's just, to me, it's an inspiring thing to work with the folks that are on this Raptor team. And then, of course, the product itself, the capability of the truck it's just such a, it's such a ridiculously cool thing to bring it off road and to actually, I certainly can't put the truck to its limits, but I've been in the passenger seat with somebody who can, and what you're getting out of the factory is an amazing product. And then the customer base just continues to be, like they rule. They tell us what we need to do, and we hear from them on a constant basis. And that the exhaust is a perfect example of them telling us something, and like us kind of like, okay, next time we have an opportunity to fix the exhaust, we're going to do it.
So Tony, is it fixing the exhaust? You're obviously incorporating, like your Mustang, selectability. Obviously, truck buyers love being able to make choices and not being told what they have to do. So is it fixing something? It is the V6 not sounding as powerful as you think your customers want to hear, so you have to make it sound like a V8?
Yeah, so I guess a couple things I would say. Maybe fixing isn't the right word, in the sense that, that implies that there's something wrong with it. The last gen was a perfectly fine exhaust. But again, right, it's a V6, so by it's a turbo V6. By default, it doesn't have the tone that you get out of a V8. And we were by no means trying to copy a V8. That's not what we were trying to do. We were trying to just strengthen the tone, the natural tone of a V6. Because you can't make a V8 or a V6 into a V8. You can't do it, right? But you can certainly enhance it. So from the beginning, we knew that we wanted to incorporate the valves, because I think the valves were just kind of the next evolution in doing something into the powertrain piece of this. And so we wanted to do that. We had incorporated them into the Shelby, the Mustang product. And so we wanted to just kind of bring that over into Raptor as well. So that was kind of where we started. But midway through, we kind of assessed it, and it just wasn't quite there. So we changed the design a bit to kind of give us some equal length in the exhaust pipes, and we got a sound that we're pretty happy with. But again, we had a lot of the media mistaking it for a V8, but if you just kind of listen to it, it's just a really, really strong EcoBoost is what it really is.
Tony, we got another question here from Kit in Cape Canaveral. He wants to know how many of the owners actually take their Raptors off-road. He says, other than parking on people's lawns at parties. He says, here in Florida, there aren't any Rubicon trails nearby, but he sees a lot of Raptors.
Yeah. So again, right. So this is a bit of a loaded question. We do actually have a fair bit of folks that take it off-road. Now, what does that really mean? Are they out there doing the kind of testing that our guys are doing in it? Probably not. Are they doing some spirited driving on trails? Yeah, sure. And, the Raptor just kind of eats that stuff up. But the one thing that is kind of, really important to understand is that it's become it's grown to such a big thing now, the brand Raptor, that folks just buy them because maybe they want them as daily drivers. And so it's for us, right? We always kind of focus on the off-road. We always focus on, desert racing and, always striving to get closer to trophy truck performance. That's the vision, right? But it's not to say that we also don't pay attention to the pavement and the guy or the gal who want to just buy and drive a Raptor as a daily driver. So it's a big audience now that we're trying to accommodate different needs. So you have folks in Florida that are driving them. You have people in New York City. I took a picture the last time pre-COVID. I was in town. It was in the city to visit with some friends and some family, and I walked down Broadway and there was a Raptor parked, on a and I took a picture of it and kind of sent it to my team saying yeah, hey guys, you know what? New York City, still Raptors in New York City. it's a point of a pride where you look at some of these big cities and you get this big truck that's really meant for off-road, but you still got it. And honestly, I've seen them in Belgium, I've seen them in England, I've seen them in Germany, I've seen them throughout obviously in Asia. We know that there's a bit of a thing happening in the western part of China where it gets a bit more mountainous and more trails as they get closer to the Mongolian border there. So again, right, we know that they're in India. We know that they're in Mexico and Canada. It's become something that we didn't necessarily envision. We're certainly happy that it did, and now we got to pay attention to everybody. We got to pay attention to all the markets and all the folks driving them in whatever terrain or pavement or condition that they choose to drive them in.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. If the success of the truck caught you by surprise, because when you guys introduced this third generation, one of the things that was pointed out is it outsells the Corvette, or has outsold the Corvette over the last 3 or 4 years, and all of Porsche's sports cars. So of course I looked up the sales numbers and started multiplying by the MSRP and doing some estimations. Looks to me you're selling around 20,000 a year. You're generating $1 billion in revenue, and I'm guessing somewhere in the $300 to $400 million range in profit. And I'm not asking you to confirm those numbers, but did the success of this truck catch you guys by surprise?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I think at the initially, that we kind of just wanted to put it out there and kind of test the waters to see if it's something that could take. We all thought there was a passion for it, and we all thought that maybe out west or more in the Southwest it would be really popular. But the amazing thing in the first gen is the amount of Raptors that we sold to just folks who wanted just a big truck as a daily driver, and then certainly the volume has initially was quite small, and it's and we're really happy with its growth over the past decade, and it's again a point of pride to kind of be able to say that, hey, we invented a space. And we play a huge role in it, and we have zero intention of letting that space go. There's a lot of passion in the upper echelons of the company about this truck. It's it's a point of pride. I took a banner to the assembly plant earlier this week, a Raptor banner that maybe was a 4x8 banner, and it just was a battle to see where they wanted to put it, in which area, and there was a lot of passion because they have there's a lot of pride with the guys that assemble this thing, and they know how important it is, and so that's always just makes me smile when something like that occurs.
Tony, I started the show talking about the Ford V8 engine from back in the day, and so to bring this around, tell us about the engine in this Raptor.
So this is again the next gen version of the EcoBoost that we had in the last gen. The Focus, we have made some changes to the hardware for some durability. We've enhanced durability of some of the components, as well as obviously because this engine is also something that's used in the F-150 and fuel economy. It's not a huge thing for the Raptor customer, but certainly something that the typical F-150 customer pays attention to. It's we've strengthened just the capability, the fuel capability of the engine, as well as the durability. Where we chose to spend kind of our resources when it came to the powertrain was really the exhaust. Just wanted to kind of take that to another level, which I think we did. I think when this truck gets out, so they're starting to kind of trickle out of the plant, but when they really get out and they can be assessed, right, and someone will inevitably take it versus the second gen, that exhaust is definitely going to have its own say.
Mark, you got a last question here?
Yeah, I'm going to provide a little bit of pushback, Tony, but don't worry.
Okay.
Nothing too threatening. It seems to me if you're selling 300 or 400,000 half-ton pickup trucks, carving out 20 or 30 or 50,000 of these things in order to make them special and provide a much bigger gross profit margin. That's absolutely, any big financial decision has risk behind it.
Mhm.
But if there's a vehicle that you guys have in your portfolio, this is the vehicle that you can take that kind of risk on. Can you talk to us about what you think the most important feature on this new Raptor is? You've talked about the coil springs, the new frame. There's got to be $4,000 or $5,000 worth of shock absorbers on this truck. Is that the key feature on the new Raptor?
Well, it's tough for me to, point to one component or one system, but I would say to you that if you're thinking about a Raptor, this is the kind of advice that I got when I took this role. If you're thinking about Raptor, the suspension, it needs to be at the forefront of how you're thinking, because that is what gives you your base capability off-road. And so I was told when I kind of joined this team to always think about that piece of it. It really is, you got to get that piece right. So for me to kind of come out and tell you, like, I love the fact that we went to a coil rear, because the driving dynamics are so much better, and they enable more travel, and they enable us to get a bigger tire. Yes, all that's true, right? And if you talk about the parts, the new parts that are on this truck that have never been kind of new, if you will, versus F-150, we've never been this differentiated from F-150. We've never been, from a part perspective, we've never been this new on Raptor. All that kind of culminates into a very, very capable suspension that we're really, really proud of. And so to me, right, I love the look of the truck. I love how we've done things different on the outside of the truck, to give it just a different look. We've changed the Gen 1 and Gen 2, the marker lights they were basically the same. We did something very different. We gave it a sleeker look. We're actually making design characteristics in the fender, which I love. They're doing that in the box now. The front of the truck went back to looking very wide, because the upper edge of the edge of the hood is very much like the first gen, which is flat. It gives it that wide look. The skid plate got much wider. All of that I love. The exhaust, you can't talk about this truck without talking about the exhaust. The tire speaks for itself, being the first OEM to be able to get into a 37. But to me, the package that I kind of am passionate about, and just, the chassis guys sit not far from here, the vehicle dynamics sit not equally as far, but in the other direction. That to me is the piece that makes the Raptor the Raptor. It is the suspension, the updates that we do to the frame, and then the tire is just something. There's just a coolness with the 37. And guys, the other thing too is that Fox, as a supplier, if you want to call them that, but really they become a partner. They're awesome to work with. They're passionate about shocks. They know shocks. So when we want to do something, we're doing it together, and so that to me, it's the chassis, guys. That's my favorite piece of this truck. Even though yes, I'm passionate about other things, and I fight for having the right materials on the seats, and I want to make sure that we have the right look, and we want to make sure that I fight for all that, guys. But in the end, I'm really passionate about the suspension.
That's great. I can't wait to actually get a chance to drive this truck. It's It has me on pins and needles just talking about it. I want to get inside one of these things and take it off road.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope
Tony.
that you guys get a chance to get in it quick and see what we've done. I think that you'll find that the balance that is there between the chassis and the powertrain, it's a pretty good balance there that I think you can have a hell of a lot of fun in this Raptor.
Real good. Tony Greco, thanks so much for coming on Autoline After Hours and bringing us up to speed with the new Raptor.
Take care, guys. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Tony.
Real good. We're going to take a quick commercial break right now. Give a shout out to our good friends at Bridgestone. Yeah, okay, we're back talking all things automotive. And Gary, you always put a list of things together. There must have been something that happened this week.
There were a few things that happened this week. Before we get to this week, though, I'd be interested in getting Mark's point of view on this. The last time we had you on the show, Mark, it was the TRX, and it sounded to me that what Tony was basically saying is that that's fine. You know, they've got one. So I mean, so I know you haven't driven the Raptor. I don't know if you've driven the TRX or not, but certainly you know about these things. So give us an assessment.
Well, just to begin with, I can neither confirm nor deny that I've driven the TRX at this point, so I can't say anything about that. However, I will say that Tony was great. I love diehard guys when they're working on these programs and you get a chance to hear them talk passionately or impassionately about the vehicles that they're responsible for. But you can bet that when that TRX came out, there was some scrambling going on at Ford, the same way that there's been scrambling going on at Ram for quite a few years trying to respond to the Raptor when it came out 3 generations ago, right? It's about time they came out and did something. I think there's a couple of interesting things. Definitely, when Ford goes to coil springs, which Ram has been coil springs, at least on the half-ton side, and even on some of their heavy duties for a long time, they're responding not just to what their customers are asking for, but they're responding to some kind of engineering aspect to that truck that needed to be changed and upgraded and modified. They did the right thing by jumping into the 37s. That's a very, very difficult thing with that frame that they're working with. But sounds like they've worked with Fox pretty well to try to limit some of the travel, because that's what you're doing. You're stuffing a bigger tire in there. You're going to have to restrict how much movement that tire does inside that fender well. So with the bigger tires, you're going to get less wheel travel than you would if you get the 35s. Maybe the rock crawling Raptor guys, if they exist, are going to want the 35s. Maybe the people who don't ever really go off-road with those aren't going to mind 37s because all they're doing is cornering on freeway on-ramps or around maybe some mountain road corners or something. But they've made changes for very specific reasons, and it's interesting to hear him talk about what those most important features are. And the exhaust, I guess, is interesting. They certainly found out from Mustang guys that they love being able to program a softer note or a quieter note or a friendly neighbor note. You know, they don't want that thing to rattle and wake people up in the morning if they have to leave early. But it's having that programmability, I think, is a natural to go from the Mustangs, where it was very popular, now into the pickup trucks. But bottom line, it's not that difficult to make a pickup truck more one-dimensional. That doesn't take a genius to do. It takes a genius to make a pickup truck do a lot more things. So carry more weight, get better fuel economy, provide more torque, pull a bigger trailer. And in some ways, this new Raptor does that, but I don't think people buy Raptors for more payload capacity, for more trailer capacity. So those coil springs maybe are a a good, smart trade-off, because nobody who's going to carry a lot of load is going to throw a lot of weight in that bed. Jeep Gladiator learned that. Ram half-ton pickup buyers know that, and so do the engineers. But now maybe Ford engineers are learning the same thing.
Tony, do you think, or Mark, I mean, do you think Chevrolet is going to have to respond with some sort of heavy-duty off-road Silverado?
Well, yes is the short answer. They've done some amazing things, obviously, with their both the GMC and the Chevy, the Canyon, and the new Bison that they have in the little compact pickup trucks. That ZR2 that they offer, with those Multimatic DSSV shock absorbers. Shock absorbers is where the technology allows people to do crazy things that they never were able to do in the past. And that DSSV shock absorber that's on that compact pickup truck or mid-sized pickup truck that Chevy uses has got to make it to GMC in their AT4, or maybe the ZR2s that they have on the Silverado half-ton side, or maybe they're going to try to do something bigger and bolder to respond to TRX and to respond to Raptor. But for right now, it seems like the Chevy buyers are happy with the off-road packages they have. And as long as GM only cares about what their existing buyers want, and they're not interested about expanding that base, then maybe that's not going to happen as quickly as we'd hope.
Okay, then do you think the Hummer pickup is GM's answer? The electric one?
It could very well be. I mean, but that's what we thought Hummer was going to be for GM originally, when they just bought them outright and essentially bought what they could compete with Jeep on. That didn't play out, obviously, for bigger economic reasons than my brain could understand. But now with the push for electric, now they're trying to rebrand what Hummer means, because it was the anti-ecologically friendly brand originally, right? And now they're trying to completely turn that on its head. Not that that's not impossible, but that'll be an interesting thing to do. But if they can do something clever with that four-wheel steer, with that ability to spin around into a little tight circle and prove to us that that's going to benefit being more ecologically friendly and compassionate to a trail, maybe there's the ability to do that. But I don't know if any of those, early adopters for electric vehicles, let alone pickup trucks, are going off-roading or care about going off-roading. So I don't know. That's a remains to be seen, and that might not be an answer we get for another 10 years.
Okay, so something actually, so now we'll move to the things that have happened recently, and another third generation truck was announced last week since we did the show, the Nissan Frontier. So the first generation was 98, the second generation was 05, and the third generation is going to be a model year 22. Wow. So obviously they've really stretched this thing out. So Mark, what can you tell us about the third generation Frontier?
Well, first of all, it's about flipping time that we've got a third generation. 2005, my brain doesn't even know how to wrap around that. This is not the segment, whether midsize or any pickup truck, to wait more than 5, at most, maybe 6 years before you come out with either a complete redesign or some kind of significant engineering upgrade. Nissan has stretched this out. To their credit, they didn't have to really push themselves because the previous generation Frontier was selling well. It was the value leader in that segment. It looked like the oldest vehicle in the segment, and it was built pretty well tough. It's had a box frame. You could hose it down from the inside and out. It isn't pretty or sexy or full of high-tech stuff inside. So there were a lot of people that were able to get into it because it was less expensive, and it also is very popular in the resale markets and being sold 2 and 3 and 4 times before it could actually go through its entire lifespan. So if they can do something similar with this much better looking pickup truck, certainly more modern, certainly more stylish, it looks a little bit similar to the Toyota Tacoma in my eye, which, is just a stylistic opinion. And I don't profess to be anything of an expert on how things look or are going to resonate with people from that end of it. But if they can do what they've done, which is essentially keep everything underneath as far as the frame pretty similar and solid to the F Alpha platform that they were using before, they've upgraded the engine, they've upgraded the transmission, they've upgraded the look of it and the style of it. This could be something that could not only make their current buyers very happy, but also attract, assuming they keep that pricing down and intelligent, they could attract a new set of buyers that could be with them for a long time to come.
So where would those buyers come from? I mean, Tacoma is got still the big chunk of the market, and then you've got Colorado and Canyon and Ranger.
Yeah, that segment in particular seems to me to have probably the most price conscious buyers. New vehicle prices are insane, and nobody knows that, I think, better than pickup buyers. But somebody who wants to maybe start their first new truck purchase is going to be very sensitive to price. Nissan maybe hasn't been on their radar before, but if they've got something that looks interesting and is going to offer a lot of value for that price, maybe that's something that'll happen. Maybe that'll pull down from that half-ton pickup truck buyer that might be looking for a used vehicle but has a little more money to spend. So they might be attracted down to that kind of $30,000 or $40,000 price tag for a brand new mid-size pickup, when they would have originally thought about buying a secondhand half-ton.
Hey, Mark, we got a question here from one of our viewers, JD Clough. Do you have any info about the Ford Maverick?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. It's certainly, with the way mid-size pickup trucks have all grown and the way half-ton pickup trucks have all grown and become stronger and more powerful, I don't think it's brain surgery to think about the idea that the original small pickup trucks have essentially disappeared. There's nothing compact anymore. So that segment is ripe for the picking. And who else better maybe than Ford to actually come to market with something when they've, like we were talking before, are selling so many full-size pickup trucks. They probably can afford to take a risk, whether that's a 20,000 or 30,000 or 40,000 vehicle volume segment, and come to market with something smaller, much less expensive, but could accommodate people who might like that regular cab or might need to throw maybe a bunch of large gear, maybe not particularly heavy gear, but big cumbersome shapes and boxes and sizes in the back that they need to carry with the bed. A Maverick on a smaller chassis, maybe a Transit Connect platform, maybe some kind of modification of that unibody platform into something that looks like a more traditional pickup truck might resonate a little better with that younger buyer that Ford always says they're trying to go after. And with a little pickup truck, there might be a market for that. We'll have to wait and see. That's as much as I'm guessing. I don't know anything for sure, but that would make sense to me. And I know Ford is incredibly smart about anticipating what pickup truck buyers want. And if they're playing around in that segment, that may very well be what we see.
Yeah.
What about the Hyundai Santa Cruz? I mean, that is, that's coming, that's announced, that's, real.
Yeah, that segment, full disclosure, I am a more traditional pickup truck person. So a lot of my tastes and preferences lean in that direction. I love it when I get a chance to drive a Honda Ridgeline. It makes perfect sense to me from maybe a corporate point of view or even a financial point of view to try to be very efficient with where you get your chassis and platforms to try new vehicles and experiment. And, taking a good, solid SUV or hybrid vehicle platform and making it look like a lifestyle pickup truck can work for a particular brand like a Hyundai or like a Kia. It wouldn't surprise me if that became something that allowed them to expand the definition of their brand and became a financial success for them. But maybe some other brands like Ford and like GM or like Ram, or even Honda for that matter, have already kind of mapped out what they're comfortable with, and their buyers seem to understand what their brand means. Maybe a brand like Hyundai can get away with something a little more expansive or untraditional. Scion tried that. I mean, I don't know how far back your memory goes. My memory doesn't go back too far anymore. But Scion or Toyota tried to play a little bit with that hybrid platform with a small pickup truck bed, but very comfortable for people who might be knowledgeable or understand what SE and SUV interiors look like. It's possible if they can be clever with how many different storage compartments or how flexible or modular that rear bed compartment could be. It could be something that could work, but for my tastes, give me something that can do more than what I need it to do rather than less, and drive like a car. I've never needed my pickup truck to drive more like a car or an SUV. So for me, I'm still on the fence.
Yeah. Mark, Subaru tried it too, and it
Yep,
didn't work.
exactly.
And I think a lot of the problem with these smaller lifestyle trucks is the bed's just not long enough. You can't get a bike in it. You can't get a wave runner in it. You can't get skis in it. Stuff is sticking out. So they look cool. And we in the media gush about how cool they all are. And then the buyer goes, yeah, but the bed's unusable.
Yeah. Well, if they can be clever, like I said, I think they could make it work. Subaru did some interesting things with a pass-through. I mean, we had the Chevy Avalanche, which tried to do some interesting things on a suburban platform.
Yeah, but it didn't work.
You're right.
The pass-through thing just, it's a cool concept,
Yep.
but it lets cold air in and, snow and
Well, gee,
people
let's
didn't
not,
like it.
let's not forget about the what was it, the Explorer Sport Track.
Yeah, again, the bed was too small.
Exactly.
I'm a skier. I just like to throw my skis in the back and go out to the trails or the slopes. And downhill skis would fit, cross-country skis would not.
Yeah, that's a very good point. If those people are interested in doing more than just what an SUV can do, but they want something that looks different, it might fill that need. I don't know how big that market is, though.
Yeah.
All right, I want to completely change gears here. And so this week was the NADA week, John, and I know that you've gone there many times, many years, but of course this year it was all virtual. And I thought it was interesting. Jim Farley had a meeting with his dealers, as is the procedure at NADA. And he was addressing the issue of moving to electric vehicles. And I think it's a fair point that electric vehicles will need less maintenance work than internal combustion engine powered vehicles will be. And so dealers make lots of money off of doing work on vehicles after they sold them. And he said that he saw two opportunities for dealers. One is EV charging subscriptions, and the second is remote repair work. So John, what do you think he's getting to with this issue of like dealers having EV charging subscriptions? I just don't understand that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand that either. Unless the dealers are going to put in level 3 chargers. And so you run to your local Ford dealer to get a quick jolt, and maybe you get a discount because if you go through Electrify America, for example, I used a 350 kilowatt hour fast charger from Electrify America. They charge 43 cents a kilowatt hour. I mean, you're at the point now where gasoline is actually cheaper than electricity at that rate. So I don't know if he's talking about that or not, Gary. That's actually, you mentioning it is the first I heard of that specific thing. Charging subscriptions.
Mm-hmm. All right. It was also interesting that they announced that they're going to start a Ford Blue Advantage certified used car dealer setup. Haven't certified pre-owned programs been the thing for quite a while? Mark's shaking his head there.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially on the truck side of the world, buying a used truck is something that a lot of people take a lot of pride in, and being able to discern whether or not a vehicle has been beaten up or not used very hard. If this is just a rebranding thing and they're just trying to call it something different in order to, I don't know, expand a segment of the business, that could be interesting. But if there's more options or more vehicles available for people to go look at and figure out whether or not it's a great deal, maybe it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I found that actually quite interesting. Ford Blue Advantage, I think they call it.
Right.
And one of the things they pointed out is every year there's 3 million used Fords that trade hands. The dealers only account for 1 million of the 3 million. And Ford sees big opportunity. So what they're doing is allowing customers to be able to shop online and look into the inventory of used vehicles, which I don't think that they can do right now, even though they're certified pre-owned. You go to the Ford dealer and you see what he's got on his lot. Whereas now you'll be able to search. And there's 2 levels of certification. One called Gold, which if I remember right is for, I don't remember right. It's for like cars that are 6 years old or newer with, and we even did the story in Autoline Daily, with fewer than 80,000 miles, I think. And then there's a blue rating for vehicles that are 10 years old or newer with 120,000 miles or less on them. And then you get warranties, including roadside assistance and yada, yada, yada. But, what Ford wants to do is have its dealers sell more used cars. And maybe, Gary, it's coming back to some of the stuff that you talked about. They're going to lose some maintenance and service on electric cars. Maybe here's a way of making it up. Dealers make actually a greater profit margin on a used car than on a new car. And guess what? If there's good demand for your used cars, that helps residuals. You can now lower the lease rates on your brand new cars. But honest to God, I think we're getting to a point where the industry is making new cars just so they can put them in the used car market at some point and make more money on them.
All right. So John, I know that you were looking at some statistics regarding the AV testing in Mark's state of California, and you found something that surprised you. Tell us what you discovered.
Well, several things. It looks to me like GM Cruise has caught up to Waymo. It did more on-mile testing or on-road testing, more miles on road. Give me a chance. I'll get around to saying what I want to say here. So
they racked up more miles.
They racked up more miles, and they had significantly fewer disengagements than before. Disengagement is not the greatest way to measure how an autonomous vehicle technology suite is working, but it's the only metric we've got. So there's a lot of focus on it right now. And what was so interesting is that GM Cruise and Waymo were about the same. Their cars were disengaging every 28,000 miles or so on average for the year. But in the second half of last year, GM Cruise just about doubled that. And by the fourth quarter of last year, in all their testing, they had 0 disengagements. And I think that's a very significant development, that autonomous technology is getting awfully close to being ready.
So I have to pull my Dr. Data hat out and throw some stats down. And and defend my friend Mr. Kraftcheck on this one.
Okay, go ahead. No.
So basically, and I was surprised how many vehicles they have. So there are 236 Cruise vehicles rolling around in California, 238 Waymo vehicles. Okay, so for the year, Cruise had 27. Like the way it worked out is that as you say, 28,518 miles before a disengagement occurred in a Cruise vehicle, which is pretty amazing. Okay. And they drove 770,000 miles, which I was a little concerned about the 770,000. It just seemed too neat to me, but we'll just keep that. Okay. So Waymo was able to drive 29,945 miles without a disengagement. Okay. So Waymo was actually able to go further without a disengagement, and they drove 628,839 miles. Okay. So, you're saying, well, they drove less miles. I think that they drove less miles because they didn't need to drive as many miles because they've been driving so damn many miles and they've got the fleet elsewhere. So it's just not all California.
Yeah. No. All good points. All good points. I totally accept that. But I would love to know how Waymo performed in the second half of the year, because what the stats that you just gave are an average for the full year.
Correct.
And compare that to Cruise's claim that in the fourth quarter it had 0 disengagements.
You could be parked and you'd never disengage.
That's right. Never even start the car up.
So Mark, do you see automated vehicles rolling around in your neighborhood? If we look out the windows, there's one right now.
No, there is not. This is a weird world, obviously, right? I haven't spent time in LA traffic in probably a year. I've never said that in my life. I've never been able to say that in my life. But because of just traveling to the airport and back and not driving that much or leaving my house or leaving Zoom calls, I haven't been able to get out and see much of anything. So if they're out there, they've got the best traffic or absence of traffic that they've ever experienced in their life, and they should be racking up tons of miles.
That's a great point.
I haven't seen any of them because I just have not been allowed to get out that often.
All right. So Rivian may be going for an IPO, and it's said that they are going to be valued at $50 billion if they do this IPO. And apparently, as of last month, they were actually valued at $27.6 billion. Does Rivian make a difference to the truck world, Mark?
Well, they're certainly getting a lot of attention, and they seem to be a pretty good example of how to have done it right. Now, I don't know what happens from here going forward, but the amount of effort and the team that they've assembled, or that they did assembled over, say, the last 3, 4, 5 years has been pretty amazing to watch. And then to see, back when we actually did have auto shows, to see the actual products that they brought out and let people look at and touch, and the people who they were able to attract to their brand was pretty amazing to watch and witness. And I mean, when you've got a whole bunch of McLaren engineers building a pickup truck, somewhere good is going to happen somehow. And that probably is at least to the way I've seen it. I haven't driven anything. I didn't follow much of I think that was the Rebel Rally. Is that the big international women's competition that they had, where they had a couple of the Rivian's pickup trucks there competing? I'm sure collecting, endurance data the entire time. I don't know exactly how they perform, but I don't see that on many people's radar right now. I think the only thing that resonates, at least in the truck world, is the name Hummer when it comes to electric vehicles. Everything else after that kind of falls pretty below the list. Well,
and Cybertruck.
Yeah, Cybertruck definitely has gotten a lot of attention. We'll see. That's also a very interesting closed universe because of the type of youngsters they had working on the build of that vehicle as well too. I can say that now that I'm old, but it's been very interesting watching it from this side, and also doing a couple of projects with Motor Trend where we were able to be invited in very early with the development of that vehicle too. So what happens next with that is going to be very interesting, I think, as well.
Mhm.
Aren't all trucks, though, Mark, basically enclosed universes? I mean, meaning the person who's going to buy a Raptor would not buy a TRX. The person who'd buy a TRX might buy a Power Wagon, but they certainly wouldn't buy a Raptor. And the guy who's going to buy a Bison is going to buy a Bison. And then, oh, by the way, now we'll go into the electric world that, there hasn't been, they haven't been authenticated yet, but the Cybertruck people will be for Cybertruck, and the Rivian people will be for Rivian, and the rich people will be for the Bollinger. And
I don't. As much as I want to disagree with you, I can't disagree with you. So I'll put it that way. I think you're absolutely right that there's always, especially with a new vehicle that comes out, but in particular with new technology, I wouldn't call pickup truck buyers or truck buyers technology resistant, but they definitely favor known traditional things over something new and sexy and shiny. So, and obviously I'm polarizing the way I'm describing those two things, but I do think there's a lot of curiosity about those vehicles when they come out. And you will definitely have the diehard first adopters jumping on those separate bandwagons and being very vocal, but the vast majority of the segment buyers, the traditional truck, maybe even the SUV buyers, are definitely going to sit back and wait a little bit before they start making their decisions with their pocketbooks.
So, John, I want to ask you, before we wrap this up, because we can go down this road forever, but it seems to me that we were talking about companies that don't have beds on the back of their vehicles, and why are there not more companies getting into that space? I mean, everybody and his brother now is making SUVs, right? I mean, and I think if the thing that occurs to me is look at a company like Mazda. Okay, so Mazda used to have pickup trucks, right? And then that went away. And then Mazda was all about cars. And so you get the Mazda 3, you could get the Miata, you'd get the 626, which then became the Mazda 6. And, so they went to cars, all cars. Now they're going to almost all SUVs or crossovers. Why doesn't a company like that say, hey, we made trucks, let's make trucks again?
Well, for the United States, you got that 25% import tax. So if you're going to be cost competitive, you got to make the truck in the United States. And Mazda is not got a plant in the US right now. It's building one with Toyota, but it's pretty much tied at the hip to whatever Toyota wants to put in the plant, which is going to be almost undoubtedly unit body front wheel drive. Whereas, if you want to do a truck right, you really want body on frame and you want rear drive. But that's been the big hang up. Automakers over the years tried to pull all kinds of tricks to get around the import tax. Toyota for years built the bed in Southern California. They'd bring in the fully assembled truck without a bed. They'd have this made in the USA bed that they would bolt onto the back at the port, and they'd get around the tax that way. If you remember years and years ago when Subaru had the Brat with 2 seats in the back facing out the back of the bed, well, they said, but it's not a pickup truck. It's a passenger vehicle, as anybody can plainly see. And they just stuck those seats in the back to get around the import tariff. So that's the thing. I mean, if you want to sell a truck in the United States, you've got to build it within the NAFTA region. It's got to be in the US, Canada, or Mexico, or you can't do it.
All right, I got plenty of other stuff, but I'm sure.
Okay, I think this is a good point to wrap it up. Hey, Mark, thanks so much for coming back on the show. This is always good to talk with you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys very much. I learn something every time I come on, so it's wonderful.
All right, so Mark, I've got to ask you. So what will the next truck be that we'll need to have you on for? If you're doing TRX, you're doing Raptor, what's the next one going to be?
Ooh, I got one, Mark, for you. Have you seen this fat truck?
Fat truck.
Fat truck. It actually came out a year or so ago. And the only reason I even noticed it is Caterpillar put out a little internet ad about it, which I clicked on. We have something in today's Autoline Daily. Check it out. It is an awesome looking truck. Oh my gosh.
Don't know
It is so
anything about
cool.
it. Haven't heard. But if Caterpillar or John Deere or any of the big heavy duty work manufacturers want to make a pickup truck, I think that's a win-win.
It's not a pickup, but you could probably, do a version of it with a bed on the back.
Yeah.
But yeah, just do an internet search for the fat truck and or check out today's Autoline Daily. We got something in there. It's really cool.
Yeah, I have a feeling that the next pickup truck is going to be electric that we'll be talking about, but we'll see.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll see you then.
Yeah, we'll see you then.
Well,
Thank you
good.
guys very much.
We'll see you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
See you, Gary.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, you guys.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires. Solutions for your journey.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.